All right, Louis Robert King, with a long and distinguished and very successful career, composer and orchestrator, and you have a very diverse body of work. You've written many, many scores. You've done musical branding for all sorts of organizations, from Google to Geico, even arrangements for a Ralph Lauren fashion show, as I understand. And now something very important, something else. Your work this past year with the Ironsides and this remarkable album, Changing Light. So to people watching, if you're a regular at the shop, you know all about the Ironsides. We have a library music section. It's actually one of the cornerstones of our operation, and we've sold a lot of them, and we continue to. And it's one of the most important records of the past year, definitely. And that's your big project we want to talk about today. But even if you haven't been to the current year yet, or if you bought from us online, if you've watched a film by Columbia Pictures, you'll note that the music you hear in their opening title scene, that sequence, that's you too. So we also want to talk about that and a lot of other stuff too. But I guess before we get into any of this, there's another important topic I saw you have some expertise with. I think you mentioned on the Twitter wine. What's going on with that? So you're also a wine expert on top of all this too?
Well, no, I wouldn't use the term expert. I'm fond of wine,
Yeah.
and I like to think I have pretty good taste in wine, certainly for myself. And when I give it as gifts, people are very happy with what they get. But I am in no way, shape, or form a wine expert. I'm not one of those guys that like you hand them the glass and they tell you the grape and the region and the year. That's not happening.
Right.
That's not happening.
Okay,
But
well, that's funny. Lately, I've actually been obsessed with the Nebbiolo grape. Barolo's there in Piedmont.
oh yes,
A
oh
little
yes.
bit north of Liguria, which is going to come into play with the Ironsides. Actually, we're going to get into that later. But yeah, Piedmont, the land of truffles, and Barolos go good with that kind of like Frito Misto and Bagna Cauda, all that kind of food up there, and
Yes.
Barbarescos. Those are really good wines. And but there's also the Rossese di Delciacqua in Liguria. And then, of course, all the Nero d'Avola in Sicily. Sicilian wines, they historically they did not export a lot of that, but
Yes.
nowadays they are, and
Yeah.
it's pretty exciting. So there's obviously with you, there's a lot to talk about. Um, but really, what I really am so excited about, so seriously, is Changing Light, and I want to talk about like okay, when the record first starts, you hear those four strummed chords, you know it's going to be something really special, and it touches on it's cinematic. The that word is very much I guess it's very much what this music's all about. It's cinematic. You can actually see the visuals. It's very visual. And if in like I've looked into the Ironsides, they've been around for a while, this band, and you joined them when was it a couple of years ago now because this record came out last year. When did you
Yeah.
join them and how did that happen?
So, um, the leader of the Ironsides is Max Ramey,
Hmm.
and Max plays bass for the band Monophonics
Right,
that you might know.
right.
Um, and uh, and the lead singer of Monophonics is Kelly Finnigan.
Hmm.
In I want to say 2018, 2017, um, I did a string suite on a project that Kelly did. It was kind of like an all-star lineup of a band called the Sentiments.
Right, right.
And we cut two singles. I did strings on both of those. Max played bass. I had no idea, never met Max, didn't know he was on the record. Uh, and then fast forward to 2020, Max is talking to a friend of mine. This probably would have been in like early fall of 2020. He's talking to a mutual friend, Chris Edwards, who actually played drums on the Sentiments and mixed it. Uh, Max was talking to Chris about he wanted to make this album with the Ironsides. They wanted to do this for a really long time, but they didn't know how they would get it done because they didn't really know orchestras, didn't really have any knowledge in that world. But that was what they wanted the band to do. My friend Chris said, "You need to call Lou. He's absolutely the right guy for this." So Max reached out. This is obviously well into the pandemic. I didn't have a whole lot going on like most every other artist. And Max told me what he wanted to do. Wanted to know if I had any interest in coming in as a co-writer and then dealing with everything orchestral. And I said, let's give it a try. Like I knew anyone in that circle was going to be fun to work with.
Right.
So I was certainly in to give it a try. I had probably the weirdest part is I'd literally never co-written with anybody.
Oh,
I've been
wow.
writing music for decades and I've never co-written for it. It's just me, I write it, and we're done, that's it.
Right.
So I wasn't really sure, and the fact that I'm in New York City and they're in the Bay Area, I wasn't exactly sure how this was gonna work, but it really wasn't that different than honestly, than the way I work with filmmakers or, when I was doing more branding work. It really wasn't that different. Um, they had already cut some basics for a few tunes.
Okay.
So they sent me those. So I would get, drums, bass, and guitars. So we had kind of a foundation, the roadmap, the groove, chord changes, and something of a vibe. And then I would have a conversation with Max. It's like, okay, well, what do we want? What do we want emotionally? What is this evoking? And give me adjectives. Where do we want it to go?
Right.
And we started with the first tune, and I actually think the first tune was probably Changing Light. I think that was the
Wow.
first one we did.
Wow.
And I would take the basics and I would mock up what the orchestra was going to do on a DAW using samples, and write the melodies, counter melodies. This is the voicings for brass, whatever. Flush
Right.
out the arrangement, mix it, send it to those guys. Then we'd have conversation. I like the melody. Could the melody be simpler? Could it maybe be a bit more this, or could it be a bit more that? And I'd make some changes and send it off. And then the process after that would have been, okay, we really like where this is, meaning, we like all the pieces here. And
Right.
then the next step would be recording things live. And that was pretty much the process for every tune.
It's interesting because we've already touched on a whole bunch of stuff that I find fascinating about this record and how it was produced. And one thing, this is really one of the positive fruits of COVID and the lockdown and all that, because that's how this was born. But it's very visual music. I mean, you could just see, like, when I listen to this record, every time I listen to it, I could see the film. It's like it's filmed by Panavision. You know what I mean? Sweeping across the landscapes, shot by helicopter. The soaring cliffs, western water scenes. It's very much like a West Coast record, but it's sometime in the 60s.
Yes.
Maybe it's Italy. But
Yes.
you talk about Monophonics
Yeah.
and all that. Those guys, they've always had this California psychedelic soul sound down. And cinematic is also one of the words I would use for a lot of their work. And it's probably not obvious to a lot of people yet, but from what you just said too, you dropped a bunch of names already, but it's taking off. I see there's a very large global thing going on with this type of music. I mean, from I don't know if you know Frank Maston, he goes under Maston. He's terrific. Skin Shape in the UK, the College of Knowledge people in Australia, like Surprise Chef, even Sven Wonder, you could say, but stuff I'm hearing from Italy right now and that I'm getting from Italy, like it's basically almost like Italo mood music. We have like the story of a Giallo section because of those old Giallo soundtracks. It's just this beautiful orchestral music. But I see there's a lot of musicians all over the place gravitating towards this. And what we're also seeing is that there's also kind of like a lot of people like working together. You mentioned a lot of names. We're probably going to talk about some of those records because you were also on those records too. So, but now San Francisco based, they're in the Bay Area, and I think it's been about 10 years they put out their first couple of 45s. Their first one, it was a Piero Piccioni number, The Raven, and it's actually an excellent track. It sounds like it almost sounds like a demo for Changing Light, because it's Italian library music, and it has the edge that the Ironsides has, but it's almost like a prototype. But it needs those lush strings and the orchestration and the stuff you put in, that top shelf stuff. So you got involved. It was just like a friend of a friend. Of course, Kelly Finnigan, his name's probably going to just come up all the time because he seems to be involved with everything. The guy's a machine. But so now you are officially a member of the band, right? That's kind of a dumb question, but you're part of the Ironsides.
Yeah, I think so. We've never really had a conversation about it, but
right.
but I guess yes.
Right. And what's fascinating too to me is that it's from 3,000 miles away. This is not something that could have easily been done, 50 years ago, in the 60s or whatever, or even 20 years ago, right? I mean, it's definitely an internet age product, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think Well, I think what made it possible to be able to collaborate um, from far away was really the fact of we could, you know, so let's say we did go 30 or 40 years ago. Someone could have recorded the basics,
Mhm.
you know, sent them on, you know, a reel to reel. You know,
Yeah.
Quincy could have done this no
Oh yeah,
problem.
of course.
You know, you send him the reel to reel, you know, he would have written out the parts, done the whole thing, done the score, send it out there. And, you know, as long as everyone was cool, was only hearing it for the first time in front of a live group. And then if we needed to make changes, you would have done it that way. That's how it probably would have gone down.
Right.
The beauty of, you know, modern technology allows us to be able to really, um, you know, get into it and have a back and forth and be able to make changes before we got to the recording studio. Because we could have done it where, you know, because I've, you know, over the years, I mean, again, like early in my career when I was doing a lot of advertising work, it's like I was standing in front of an orchestra like once a week, and you were making changes on the stand all the time. Like, you know, people were there and it was like, no, change this bar and doing stuff like that. So working that way certainly happens. The beauty of modern technology is that we could be far away and be able to really hone down what it was going to be. And then we didn't, you know, then we could really focus on getting everything how we wanted at the session and not like rewriting.
Right. Well, the feedback is so much quicker now.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
And that's excellent because I know, like, from the perspective of a writer, you can think of yourself as an independent artist, of course, and it's your own vision, but you can't work alone. You need an editor and a lot of other people to make anything work and the smallest thing work. And the same with the musician, you know, even if you're a guitarist or singer-songwriter or whatever, you definitely, every piece of art is always a collaborative effort. I truly believe that, especially seeing something come to fruition from, you know, the basic germ of an idea into the finished product. But this just shows a way how you can collaborate just globally and do very dynamic, interesting things. Because I do feel like this record, even though it does basically, you feel a lot of that 60s, 70s cinematic film score, library music feel. It's definitely its own thing, and it's something that couldn't have been created 20 years ago, and who knows if it can be created 20 years from now, but it's of this time, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Which is what I love about it. Now, did you ever meet these guys, Max and Joseph and them? Did you ever meet them in real life yet?
I've met Max when
That's
Monophonics
crazy. I
were
love
touring. They were in town, and that may have actually been the first time I met Kelly too.
Oh, wow.
It's entirely possible. And I haven't, yeah, Jamie and Joe, I haven't met.
It's funny how this works. Like, well, Kelly, he's a huge friend of the store, and he's been just very supportive of me personally, of basically everything I do, and he's so nice, so genuine. I haven't met him yet either. I mean, you know, we talk online a lot, but he's moving here like actually in a couple weeks, so I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of them soon.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating how we can do this now, and how that's how the Ironsides really went from those singles 10 years ago, which were fantastic, but to this very terrific, excellent record. And Max and Joseph Ramey, brothers, they are basically, I think they were the core of the band originally.
I believe so.
And their family's from Liguria. So that's, you know, we were talking about that earlier. And it's significant, I think, musically and culturally. Liguria, you know, Simonetta Vespucci, the model for Botticelli's Birth of Venus, she comes from there, but a lot of stuff comes from there. But the Scala Genovese, Gino Paoli was key there. He was heavily influenced by the Beats. And there's a big question I want to ask you at the end about someone that you're really into. But the Beats were kind of my own very strong influence. Kerouac definitely, but Allen Ginsberg was a teacher and a mentor of mine for a long time. I was very lucky with that. But the song Il Cielo in una stanza, you know that song? Mina, it was like a super hit in Italy in the 60s. Mina covered it. But Gino Paoli, he wrote it, and this is part of this school that was born there in Liguria. And I can actually see an amazing treatment of that with the Ironsides, with Kelly, and get some people in there, and that could be something that could come after Changing Light. But I can just see it. But I can see that this music is birthed in that sort of tradition, which I love. It's essentially library music. I mean, it's not Justin Timberlake or top 40 stuff, but I'm not really interested in top 40 stuff because that stuff, it's not really having an impact. but this sort of thing, this is very essential, and it's great music. And it recently, I guess you guys got over 1 million streams. Is that so? It topped over 1 million.
Yeah, so Changing Light, the single,
Mhm.
that single on Spotify alone has over 1 million. And
Wow.
I think cuts on the album, again, just on Spotify, are probably just over 3 million.
Wow. That's amazing.
I mean, I have to say, I went into this project with no expectations
Right.
because I've been doing things for a long time, so I try to not have them.
Right.
I just thought this is going to be a really great experience. We're gonna make something we're proud of,
Mhm.
and for me personally, I thought it was just going to be a great calling card. It would be something to be able to say, this is something I did, and who knows what's going to happen. And to the response we've gotten has really been overwhelming. I would not have guessed that there were as many people who would have been into this as there are.
Right, right. And I do see that's growing because like I said, there are a lot of other musicians in this area are trying to achieve this. And I think Changing Light is really the top of the cream of this music and at this moment right now. But there are people who are really getting into it. And I see it in the store all the time. People who's like, what are you
I'm sure.
playing right now? So are there any plans to perform this live?
I wouldn't say plans.
Okay,
Doing this live is complicated
right.
just because you've got two challenges. If you want to do it so that somebody walks in and says, wow, that sounds just like the record, we need a whole lot of bodies. And that that's a tall order to put together and then have ticket sales that would equal that to be able to pull it off. Um, is there a way that you could do a pared down version that's cool and gets the vibe of everything? We've batted it around.
Mhm.
That also still takes it's a substantial group,
Right.
even then. People talk about how lush it is, and it's like, well, the reason it's lush is because depending on the cut, you're hearing what equals, 24 to 28 string players.
Right.
So, that's why it sounds lush. That's why it sounds like what it does. We had a string quartet on stage. It's not going to sound lush. It's going to sound nice, but it's not going to sound lush.
Absolutely. It would be like
So,
101 strings touring. Yeah.
right. So those that's really the biggest challenge. And, we talked about maybe some ways that we could get around that, but I can't say that's a focus at the moment.
Right. Well, it fascinated me because like Changing Light has gotten over 1 million streams right now, and there's no tour. So, and it's something that's been on our minds a lot lately, touring. Like, what are your thoughts on touring in this world when everything's online? You have Spotify, everything's digital, you can stream your music. And is it even necessary, do you think, for new music?
I think depending on my take would be, and this is as someone who's never toured, I can honestly see how it's a great way to feed your fan base, to grow your fan base. So I can understand, I see the value in it.
Mhm.
The flip side is, touring's hard. It's really hard for independent artists. I mean, people think it's glamorous, and it's nowhere near that. It's hard work. Digging ditches might be, yes, there's the time you're on stage. That's fantastic. Everybody loves it. But everything that comes between the breakdown and the setup in the next town it's heavy work. It's a slog. So I can certainly understand why an artist wouldn't want to do it. And, I guess necessary, I don't know that it's necessary, but I can see that it's helpful for an artist.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know that, today what's necessary. Like
Right,
there's
exactly.
so many ways to get from where you are to where you want to be. And if you're smart and a little bit of luck, you can get there in a lot of different ways. So, I hear what you're saying.
It's just weird because touring, as you said, it is hard. It's a slog. And if you really love an artist, support them by going to see their show because that's like it's hard work and it's important. But so many people I know don't go to shows anymore. And I feel like shows have changed like compared to
Yeah.
say 20 years ago. It was just a different scene across the board, across all
Yeah.
styles of music. And so it's just something that's on my mind now. Like how essential is it? It's obviously primeval, playing music in front of people. I mean, not going to go away, but certainly with all these other options, like how this album was composed, online, it's very different now, and people are spending all their time online and not going out. But I do want to talk also more about, like, say, the kind of equipment you use. Like, did you sit down at a keyboard, a piano? What was it like composing and working on these songs? Like, the process that, you said you showed them what you did, and they're like, okay, here's some more adjectives, here's some words. So how did that all go about? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I'm a big proponent on anything I'm working on is some distance, like
Mhm.
walking away from something. So, if I'm working on a film, I watch the film down a bunch of times, kind of get it in my head. Um, for something like this, listen to the basics. Just listen to it over and over and kind of get it in my head so that I can kind of walk away and I could, in my mind's ear, play down the track. And then you start just kind of thinking, like, okay, and you kind of let your mind hear things. What's the instrumentation? Is it strings? When it goes to this, what does it go after that? And I like to let it come to me.
Mhm.
For some of these, I literally heard the melody when I was playing it down the first time.
Oh, wow.
I mean, Return from Ashes, I heard that melody. I heard probably the first 2/3 of that melody. Second time I heard the verse. It's like it just comes to you. It's kind of like improvisation, but
Right.
um, it's very much like that. And then if I have an idea of a germ, pardon me, of kind of an idea where I want it to go, what I think, then it'll come into sitting at a keyboard and kind of going, well, no, it doesn't go there. No, it should go up here. And then, the nice thing about technology is I can record that, take a step back, give it a listen, and go, yeah, I don't know, that's not quite right. Yeah, I like that part. I don't like this part. This should be, and then manipulate it. And then maybe I get frustrated and I walk away. And then the next day I come back and it's a lot clearer and I've had time. Or, at 11 o'clock the night before it hits me. That's what it's supposed to be. And I
Right.
do it that way. And sometimes I'll work it out on staff paper. I was schooled as a pen and paper composer.
Mhm.
So, to just, jot down some quick chord changes and go and again, I've got the tune in my head.
Mhm.
So it's doing this and then we're going to do that. And then, kind of trying things and doing it that way. I mean, certainly for all the arranging stuff, voicing what's going on in different places. I did a lot of that sketching on paper, really rough, and then you kind of play it in to do the mock-up. But it that's not uncommon for me to work that way. But it's really a mishmash. Like there's no one, some guys will be like, oh, I pull out the guitar and they just kind of strum and play, and that's how they come up with things. And
Right.
I'm not an instrumentalist. I can't really play anything. So it's all kind of happens in my head, and then I use technology to be able to let other people hear that, or I'll, sketch things out on paper.
Right. And what do they send you? Like audio files or
Yeah, audio file. Yeah.
uh, and then what'd you do on software? Like what software did you use when you
I
did
use
this?
Yeah, I use Logic Audio.
Okay.
So bring the 2 track of the basics in,
Mhm.
do a little tempo map, and then all the process that I just said. And then, for building the mock-up, it'll be, you know, I tend to go pretty deep. So it's not like I have a patch that's just strings. It's like violins, violin two, viola, cello,
Right.
and do each thing. If I'm doing brass, I literally do French horn one, French horn two, French horn three, try and make it as expressive as possible, try to make it as realistic as possible. But, and I'm used to doing that because in the film work that I do, often, even for a mock-up, even if something's going to be replaced live, you really have to make it as real as possible. And for the things that don't have a budget, I really want it to sound as real as possible. And I really go out of my way to be able to fool people as to whether it's live or not live. So even for this, it's like it's just going to make it just makes it makes it easier for everybody to understand what it's going to sound like.
Right.
If you heard the mock-ups and you heard the record, obviously the live players are substantially more expressive and it's 1,000 times better, but it's not like it's a surprise of
Right.
what you're hearing. Like, oh, what's that? Like it translates.
Right. Fascinating. And you wrote the score. I mean, obviously you'd have to,
Yeah, oh yeah, and then so then after we like everything, so then I'm writing a score and creating parts and sending those over. And yeah, and then for the sessions, I had hoped that we would do it in a way where maybe we booked a week. I would fly out, I'd
Mhm.
be there, and we'd kind of do it. Um, because we were doing this kind of coming out of COVID, we had all the musicians, completely understandably, they started getting gigs. They weren't saying no to anything.
All right. Yeah.
So you couldn't get anybody except it was like Tuesday at 11 a.m. And then, maybe we couldn't get, another group until it scheduling because everybody, and this was true even for Kelly and other projects and things, because Kelly was our recording engineer and we were doing it at his studio. The logistics of getting it done were not as simple as, oh, well, we'll just book a week and get everybody in. That was not going to happen. So it wasn't particularly practical for me to keep coming out. So I would create the parts, send it out, they'd print them. We would then connect with me on Zoom, put a laptop in front of the players in the room, and I would rehearse, coach. I wouldn't say conduct the group and work up the sessions that way.
Fascinating. Yeah, I saw a video of that. So that was out there on the West Coast in their studio, right?
Yeah.
Wild. Yeah, that's really cool. And it takes so many people, like I said before, when we were talking about, it takes so many people to put something together like this.
Well, a record like this, a large part of it is that, yeah, there's the record sounds like the record does because of the choice of notes, the way it's arranged, the instrumentation that's chosen. But the way it's recorded is also an important part of it. And Kelly certainly understood what we were going for, and he had all the right gear to be able to achieve it, and he knows what we were looking for. So that certainly was a large part of it too.
Sure, and that's also fascinating too. Kelly's also a producer, and production is hard. I mean, you got to be really into it. It's not just loading up some tape and hitting record. There's a lot of knowledge and expertise, and that's just fascinating because, like, you guys are this scene. It's just people are just taking it into their own hands and creating this work. Recording it, playing it, producing it. Wasn't Max? Yeah, produced by Max Ramey. So Max is the producer in this too.
Yep.
Fascinating. And then the other thing too, I was thinking about too, the score. Like, I'm used to, I can read music, but writing it's pretty rusty. I'm used to, as a guitarist, tablature. I do everything in tab. It's so easy.
Sure.
And I think like a lot of bands and groups, they're thinking when they come up with a song, they're writing on a guitar, they'll just write down the tab or whatever. But here, this is a much larger effort. And so like a lot on the back end went into doing all this sort of thing. And also, the song titles, like, the Web, The Growing Dream, Violet Vanish, they're all very evocative. Who wrote those? Were they titled when you got them?
The songs had titles, wasn't necessarily the title that it ended up being, but
Okay.
yeah, I think Changing Light was most likely Changing Light when I got it. The others may not have had names, or it had a different name. Could have been song number 3. And I was not involved with the naming. I think I'm not exactly sure. I know Max played a large part in the naming, and I'm sure the other guys did too. But I can't take credit for. They're great names. They came up with some great names.
The cover art, it's really interesting too. What's going on here? And I don't know who did it or who took the cover, but
I know who did it, and his name just went right out of my mind. Fantastic photographer. He does incredible work. I could look it up quickly, but when you post this, we'll have to include it.
Yes, it's interesting because it seemed almost like an astronautical type helmet thing at first. But now I've come to think of it as like the view from the bottom of a tumbler, a rocks glass. I mean, and even so, there's still a lot going on. There's motion and whatever, but it's fascinating. It's got like an inherent drama to it, the photo, which
Yeah.
to me is aligned with the music. The music,
Yes.
it's dramatic. It's got
Yes.
drama in it, which, it seems like a lot of your work does. Um, so, and what's been done, like, okay, it's got all these streams, people are discovering this record, it's selling. What's been done to promote it? Like, how has the word gotten out? Because whatever it is, it's worked. I mean, do you know what's been done? How are people discovering this?
Well, I think it's been a lot of, well, there's certainly been the word of mouth. Um, and I have to say, one of the things that I've always admired about social media and loved about social media is the fact that it is a place where we can share things. We can
Mm-hmm.
share our interests, we can share restaurants, we can share and we can share music.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of people who will just post, I got this album. I love this album. I walked into a record store and this was playing and I bought it and I, want you all to know about it has really been incredible. And that has certainly been a large part of the growth, I believe.
Nice.
Certainly, Terry Cole and everybody at Colemine has been insanely supportive, and they
Mm-hmm.
do the things that they do for all their artists and
Right.
put things out there and do the behind the scenes work and work all the channels that they work. But that only gets you so far. You need those other lucky things to happen
Right.
where the right person happens to see it, and you know, and that'll grow, and that's how audiences grow. And I'm not 100% sure how much some of the algorithms on streamers have played, and just like putting it in playlists and putting it in front of people. The whole if you liked this, you'll like that kind
Right.
of thing. I'm sure there's a little bit of that, and as I feel like that's kind of a snowball effect once you start getting more and more people, I think then the algorithms tend to push you a little bit more. So I'm sure that's going to be part of the mix.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not the kind of music that you would think. It's not like Justin Timberlake or
No,
anything like that. It's not Led Zeppelin. It's not top 40 music. It's its own thing, and it's taken off definitely, and people are finding it, and I find that very interesting. And what's next for the Ironsides?
well, more music. That I would say that would be the big next. What that looks like when it happens, that I'm not 100% sure, but there will be more.
Nice. There's other records too that have come up like this one. You're rolling this, and again Kelly and
Yeah.
so can you talk a little bit about this? This
Yeah, well, I mean, I had the pleasure of being able to do this string arrangement on Shape of My Teardrops, which, and I'm not saying this just because I was involved. That's one of my favorite Monophonics tunes, and that
oh,
I think is, and I think that album is the best album they've put out. I think everything about it is just so good. The songwriting, like the best stuff.
it's an
Um,
excellent record. It absolutely
yeah.
is.
So yeah, I mean, Kelly calls and says, "Hey, I got a tune. We want you to do the strings on." It's like, okay,
Nice.
same process. Sends me the tune in whatever shape it is in at the time. Ideally, I like to get something with the final vocals, if not something close to the final vocals,
Right.
as opposed to a scratch track, because that really sets the tone for a song.
The vocal.
The performance, yeah, the vocal performance, and it's like I kind of feed off that as to what is going on behind it.
Mhm.
Certainly everything else plays a role, but for me, the real linchpin is the performance. I mean, if you think of, you take a Otis Redding vocal, and then you take, something that's 180 degrees in intensity,
Mhm.
and what you're going to write is going to be different depending on those two things.
Right.
So it's nice to get a real feel for what that performance is going to be.
Right.
But yeah, so Kelly would send me, a rough mix, and then we'd have a small conversation, again, kind of asking about adjectives, like what do we want? Is it like, is it lyrical? Is it rhythmic? Does it have a lot of energy? And then the same thing. I'll absorb the tune, and then things start to hit me. Oh, it's like, oh yeah, that's what goes on in the chorus, and
Nice.
then I'll send it
I love
off,
that.
and
I love that you're talking about adjectives and you're saying, let's describe this by adjectives. What do we want?
yeah, I because that's what music is. It's like
Right,
music is
right.
emotion and it's feeling. And yeah, I mean, I've rarely had a conversation with a musician where we talk notes,
Okay.
actual, like the notes,
Right.
because, you know, it's possible that that conversation could happen in the context of what somebody's trying to achieve big picture.
Mhm,
But at the root of it, it's emotions, it's
mhm,
feelings.
mhm.
And it's like, what are we trying to evoke? What do we want? Whatever I'm adding, what is it doing to the tune? Is it adding energy? Is it adding uh emotion? Is it soaring? Is it, again, like I just fall back into adjectives.
Right. Words. Yeah. Words and music are one.
Yeah, yeah, you could tell me, hey, it'd be really nice if you sat on the nine a lot. It's like, okay, sure, but that again, that doesn't really tell me what we're trying to achieve, where we're going with the song, or how I'm supporting the song is another question. Like, in what way? It's like, are we does it really need to lay back and kind of let everybody do their thing? I mean, sometimes that's instinctual as to when you should kind of poke out and be busy and when you need to set back. But it's part of the conversation too.
Nice. Nice. That's cool. And Monophonics are on tour right now, and I know they're selling out shows. So
Yeah, I think they're doing a little quick tour with Lee Fields. A
mhm.
bunch of dates with Lee Fields this
Absolutely.
tonight and the coming weekend. Yeah.
They're going to hit the East Coast, I think, in mid to late April. So some stuff over there. But now another record you had a part on, another modern. So, right?
Yes.
What went on with that?
Same thing.
Okay, yep.
Kelly calls, I got a tune. Yes. All right. And that's a really beautiful song.
Uh-huh.
Uh, to be young on Christmas. And like that, what I remember is the word was lyrical. That's what we were looking for.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
A very lush lyrical record. Now, there's also the Sextones, the Sentiments. I don't have those records here, but there's another record. This is a record I'm crazy about. Alanna Royale. Trouble is, I love this record. I love it in terms of modern soul. She's just the best, and it is deserving of a major breakout moment. I mean, not just Alanna and her voice and the songs, but this particular record. I mean, I love this record. I even tell people, look, if you like Amy Winehouse, okay, you need to get to know this record, put it on. I mean, I feel like she's going to be huge, no doubt. So, how did this all come about, too?
Yeah. Alana's an incredible singer,
Yeah,
just an incredible artist. I love her to death. I think she's fantastic,
she just sold
and
out
an
LA last
amazing
week.
human being. I'm
Uh,
sorry.
she just sold out a show in LA last week, apparently. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
how did that happen? What went on there?
Um, so Kelly produced it. Kelly gives me a call and he says, I'm working with this singer out of Nashville, and I've got this song, and he said it's got a really long intro.
Uh-huh.
The intro is like 2.5 minutes. And we want something on, it needs this thing. We have strings, and he's like, I don't know what it should be. He wasn't 100% sure. And hats off to Kelly in that, he doesn't come in with a preconceived notion of what it should be or put handcuffs on you as to what you can do.
Right.
Um, it's like, okay, well, what could it be? Let's hear it. And, so I had, I was given a whole bunch of rope to hang myself
Uh-huh.
on that one. And um, that one took a little while because the introduction was so long. It was kind of like, how do we get from here to there? Like, how do we start off? How do we construct this that we're kind of taking the listener on this journey
Mhm.
from where we are to when Alanna comes in?
Mhm.
And um, I I definitely kind of had some imagery for the song. I saw it as a little bit of kind of an internal battle.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I went with the arrangement of kind of these. If it's a lot of there's a lot of voices saying something and then something commenting back musically.
Mhm.
Um, and and that's what came out.
Nice. Yeah, it's terrific.
It's a great tune.
It's a great tune. It's a great record. I'm crazy about it. So I hope you work more with her and do more stuff again.
I hope so too. Like I said, I think she's a fantastic artist. I think she's a wonderful human being, and we had a great time working together.
Nice. And there's another one I don't have, but I'm actually getting it this weekend. I hope. Whatido Archive Group.
Yes.
Palace of a Thousand Sounds. Now, it's massively cool. It's legit modern exotica, and exotica is another one of our specialties. And that record isn't even like widely available here. It's like I feel like not enough people know about it. But my
Yeah.
man Milano shipped me all that he had, which is a case, not enough of them, but I'll get a bunch of them soon. So how did that come about, and what'd you do with that?
Well, I had worked again. Kelly called me because he was producing the Sextones
Right.
album, and pardon me, man, dry. Um, and I worked on the song "Daydreaming," did
Uh-huh.
strings on that,
Mhm.
and I when I was doing that, I had conversations with Alex for the Sextones, kind of where we wanted to go, what it was going to be. After we had done that, a little while later, he had said, "Hey, I'm working on this other thing, and I'd really like you to do some things on it." And I was like, "Sure, send it. What are we doing?" He said Exotica, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm there in a second." Like I remember I remember my Exotica phase when I bought quite a bit of that and listened to quite a bit of it.
When
Uh,
was
you know,
that? When was that?
oh, probably right after college.
Okay.
There was a bunch of those albums that
The
I
the
was,
the Cocktail Nation era,
yeah, very much. Yeah, very
Combustible
much.
Edison and all that.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was in. I'm like, yeah, whatever it is you wanted, I'm in. And that album, some songs I didn't do very much. It was very much like let's get strings on the melody and
Mm.
that's all it really needs. And then for some of the other ones, it was a little more involved, whereas, kind of coming up with lines, do a little bit more arranging than not. But it's a great record. It's a really fun record. And I had a blast working on it.
That's great. I'm really excited to be able to offer it in the store
Yeah,
because,
that's great.
yeah, it came out from Record Kicks in Italy, and not widely available here. But if you're into Exotica, you definitely need a copy of that record. I love it. Um, and someone else we need to talk about too, because we have a beat section, we have a beat generation section. Very informed by the beats, and I got to have a place for my people. So we have Ginsberg, we've got William S. Burroughs, Kerouac, spoken word, but there's someone else I put in there because he was not really part of the beat generation, but he was very much informed by them too. He came probably a decade too late. Tom Waits. He supposedly now. What's the connection between you and Tom Waits?
Um, Tom Waits is probably my favorite artist, and as a very young artist when I was in college, like
Mm-hmm.
he was somebody played Tom Waits for me,
Mm-hmm.
and it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, I've never heard. Now this would have been kind of the stuff I would have been played first would have been the 80s trilogy when he got together with Kathleen Brennan and you got a lot of Swordfish Trombones, Rain Dogs,
He does, yeah.
Frank's Wild Years. That was my introduction to Tom Waits. And
Right.
once
Right.
I heard that, I wanted to hear everything. And
Mm-hmm.
then I heard the beat jazz influenced early stuff, which I also loved. So it
Right.
was like, this guy really covers all my bases. It's like I love jazz, and he's got that whole vibe in a great way. And then he's doing this other stuff that's like from another planet that I adored everything about it.
Mhm.
I mean, I have things I did in college that were just a guy trying to sound like Tom Waits. I mean,
Right.
and my friends, like a lot of us were just huge fans.
Mhm.
I think he's one of the most interesting artists that's
Mhm.
ever been. And for someone at the time to kind of come up with what he came up with is just mind blowing.
Absolutely, and underrated. He's one of those artists, sort of like I would say like Kate Bush, who I mean she recently with Stranger Things she got into a wider audience, but she was always
Yeah,
kind of like a little beneath the surface, and so was Tom Waits,
yeah, yeah.
deserving of a much wider audience.
Yeah. Well, I think the challenge to Tom Waits is the voice, and for a lot of people, they can't get past that. And
Right,
I understand. I completely
right.
understand. But if you take a step back and the lyrics, the imagery that he paints
Hmm.
is just it's just gorgeous. I mean, the things I mean, I honestly this happens all the time. You know the tune On the Nickel?
Yeah,
It's like I walk down the streets of New York, every time I see a homeless person, that tune comes into my
right,
head because I know that that was kind of the origin of the song. It was the streets of LA. The nickel was the street,
right,
and that's kind of what inspired it. And it's like I can't divorce that imagery.
right. Exactly. Well, and the imagery that's so big with him. And what I love about him, he has said words and music are one. It's that attitude. And he was influenced by like Kerouac and Bukowski and these writers, and that informed his music.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's great. So and tell me also about the Columbia Music, the title screen. How did that come
Yes.
about? When was that even?
I couldn't nail down the year, but it was 90s.
Okay.
I would
Ah,
say late mid, something
that's
like that,
that's
or
phenomenal.
early mid. I was right out of college. I the first job I ever had was at a what would be a music production facility that did a lot of music for advertising.
Okay.
And I got hired to basically like answer the phones, make tape dubs, clean the floors, that kind of stuff. And as time slowly went on, it wasn't that long before I got the opportunity to start orchestrating for the staff composers.
Right.
They had seven composers, incredibly talented guys, but none of them were trained to really deal with an orchestra. So they used to hire an outside orchestrator to come in, would kind of turn what would be at the time, because of the technology, very crude mock-ups into something that would actually sound like an orchestra. And we happened to be working on the Columbia Pictures opening titles,
Wow.
and I probably wrote a demo for it, but they chose another person's, and it was like I got to orchestrate it. So it was a really fun thing to do. I mean, we I we recorded it in Minneapolis. So I remember it well. Like I got up in the morning, took a cab to JFK, got on a plane,
Uh-huh.
flew to Minneapolis, took a cab to what was NPR, uh, Minnesota Public Radio was the recording studio that we were using.
Mhm.
We had like 65 musicians, came in, played it down, who knows how many times. I mean, we had everybody for an hour. It's only 25 seconds long. So, you do a bunch of takes. Yeah, we like this one, we like that one. Great, thank you very much. Packed up. I got back in the cab, went back to the airport, came back to New York.
Uh-huh.
And then I actually did the mix too
Oh wow.
on that. Yeah, and we did a bunch of versions. We did a version that so the composer on that was a man named Jonathan Elias.
Hmm.
And John is a John likes a lot of different things, and he all at the time liked um, synths with orchestra, which at the time was pretty common. You could hear that in a lot of film scores at the time. So you'll hear some versions where the melody is led more by by a like chord piano sound with a lot of Vangelis-ish pads in there, and the orchestra's maybe tucked back, and then you'll have other versions it's very orchestra forward. But yeah.
Well, this is timeless. I mean, now it's in my head. Just, it's perfect though.
Yeah, well, I mean, John wrote a great theme, and we were able to, give it that Hollywood treatment and
Right.
make it sound like like what one would expect, and yeah.
So you wear a lot of hats, you create in a lot of different ways, and you seem to be forging this path where you have more and more artistic freedom. I think, like, where do you see yourself going from here?
Well, I think it's just more of the same. I think I've got 3 or 4 projects where I did some arranging on for other artists that are going to be coming out this year. I continue to score films. We'll keep doing more of that. As I said, I think there'll be some more Ironsides in the future for everyone to hear.
Good.
And we'll see what other opportunity that I don't know or what other thing I could be doing that I hadn't even considered pops up in the coming months. I never really know.
Did you ever consider or think about or want to compose a piece that's all entirely yours and have it be performed by one of the world's orchestras, like the Cleveland Orchestra or something?
Yeah, I mean that could be next. The truth is, I haven't had time for something like that.
Right.
Maybe at some point I'll be able to clear that out. I mean, I had considered doing an album of my own kind of ilk, but I'm not 100% sure what it would be, and I haven't had time to really focus on that thought. But hopefully in the future we'll have something.
Nice. Good. I can't wait. I look forward to seeing this stuff. And I definitely appreciate you taking the time to talk, because this is important. Your work's important. And I really wanted to get this on here because I felt like you would have a lot to say, and you have, and you did, and you do. So that's terrific.
Well, it's my pleasure to be talking to you. I'm flattered that you wanted to talk to me, and it's been a real pleasure. And I love talking music, so always happy to do that.
Okay, well, maybe we should do this again then when there's some more Ironside stuff and other stuff down the road too.
That would be wonderful.
Excellent. Louis Robert King, terrific. We're going to have links and all that stuff down below and everything, but it was a real pleasure, and thank you very much. And I know we'll be talking soon. So
thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks. But it is just really fascinating. I think our people are going to like this, and I think it's just going to be, it's interesting all around. So, and all of the records, not just the Ironsides, like this Alanna's record, all these, the Monophonics, all the stuff that you're touching is just gold. So,
well, I've been lucky to be able to be working with really talented people. I mean, that's a big part of it too. I mean, I can't think of too many things beyond, everything I've done that's been artistic have been with really talented people, and you do your best work when you're working with people who are doing really great work. It's very different than if you're, doing something corporate. And it's like, the demands and what's being asked of you is mediocre, and whatever you're looking at is mediocre, but it pays the bills, so it's nice when it's good on that side. But no, I've been very lucky on all these things to be really, really great stuff. And like I said, and the stuff that's going to be coming out, I think you're gonna dig. Kelly's solo record, I worked on 2 cuts. Great tunes.
Oh
great
gosh,
tunes.
that's excellent. And he's moving out here, so
yeah, which is, well, I think it's going to be. I think I'll be curious how it all works out for him, because he's been in California for his entire life, and it's going to be a different thing, but he's just gonna have the opportunity to be able to work with different people. It's like I could see him, going down to Nashville more often, and I think there could be opportunities that he would have never even thought of that might pop up because of where he is. It's like, it's crazy. The fact of you really don't know what things are going to come to you because of whatever, kind of that, domino effect, butterfly effect, whatever you want to say. It's like,
Absolutely. I see it all the time.
yeah, I mean, he moves there and it's like, who does he stumble into that he wouldn't have stumbled into? And who
Right.
says, hey, come on down to Nashville, and who does he stumble into there? And I
Right.
mean, he's such an incredibly talented guy,
Amazing. I
but
hope to work with him. I mean, he's incredible. So,
he really is. But that new album, I haven't heard the other cuts, but I know they'll be phenomenal. And but yeah, uh, so independent record stores are part of the reason why we've been able to do what we've been able to do. It's
mhm.
like people playing it and people hearing it, and you know that kind of support is kind of huge. Well, but I think really what you're doing is an extension of what a great record store always was, because it was a place where you would walk in and you could say, "Hey, what's cool, or what do you recommend, or what?" It was a place to hang and discover, and
Mhm.
you're kind of doing that just on a broader scale and bringing other things in and not making it just about, the records. It's like it's other things that you're going to be
Right.
exposing people to and other relationships that you're going to be fostering, and I think that's fantastic. It's like, for a long time I think it was in the like late 90s, whenever I would go to a city, no matter where it was for whatever reason, I would find a local record store, I'd walk in and I'd say, give me 10 CDs that I should walk out of here with.
Oh,
And
cool.
like, just never know who somebody, whether it was Newbury Comics in Boston or
Mhm.
uh, uh, I can't remember the place in Austin. But I was like, what do you got? And it's like, I think you just hear great stuff that way. It's like, I think it's a great resource. It's like, you guys are the vanguards. Like,
Yeah. And even like Colemine, they're really kind of an indie label,
very,
Yeah, very. So that's where the exciting stuff is coming out. So I love that.
yeah, yeah. No, Terry has great tastes
Yeah,
and has
he does.
really, really picked out some fantastic artists, and it's quite impressive. It's a hell of a family, and it's all very supportive too. It's a
Mhm.
lot of, I would compare it to Stax,
Yeah, right.
like that kind of vibe. It's like you know, you, to be able to have, you start to look at the liner notes, and this guy played on this, and he played on this, and he played on that, and he
Yeah,
played on that, and
exactly.
it's like it's very incestuous in the best way you can use that word.
Super. Yeah.
That everybody's kind of supporting everybody else and keeping it, giving everybody opportunities and supporting everybody and making great music. And I don't know that there's too many labels that exists
No,
at
no,
all.
no.
We need the wine.
Oh yeah, right. Oh gosh. Yeah, don't get me started.